Hey gamers, I want a puff puff real bad. It's me, Patrick.
I'm on my millionth slime. It's me, GC.
I'm Cullen, the Dragon Quest boss with a bad theme song. Wait, does that not narrow it down?
Welcome to RPGaymer Season 3, Episode 6, a podcast about Dragon Quest. Gamers, we are here to talk about Dragon Quest, but as you notice, it's just me, Patrick, today, and another plethora of guests, which is super awesome. And today we have YouTubers Cullen.
Hello.
And GC Vazquez.
Hi.
We'll refer to him as GC for the remainder.
Usually that Vazquez is my father's name. You can just call me GC.
GC works. GC's good. Good.
Yes.
GC, did you know that you are the reason that this is happening today, among a few other people that have been on this season? I feel like this season is the season of all of the people who have inspired me to begin a YouTube content creation.
The legacy season.
Yeah, literally, that's like the good way to describe it, because K-Bash was on. Bopper will be back on. David Vince will be on later on in the season, and we have you, GC. So, like, thank you for being here. I'm happy that you are here.
Thank you. I'm flattered.
Tell the listeners a little bit about yourself. What you do, man?
Well, like you said, my name's GC. I do videos on the internet, and I'm most known for my retrospective series on Dragon Quest, and more
you're
recently,
the artist formerly known as GC Positive. Correct?
I am the artist formerly known as GC Positive. It's true. I changed the positive out, and I just put my name in. I thought
he became GC Toxic.
Yeah, I became GC Negative.
I've heard that about you.
It's the joke everyone seems to wanna make.
You kind of invited it onto yourself just a little bit.
I did. GC Vazquez just rolls off the tongue a little better, I find. I just, because I wanted to kind of branch out beyond certain topics, but we'll get into that.
Like a kid saying his first swear word, removing the positive off of your name. It's like, I'm no longer pure.
I'm no longer a nice guy.
So much edge.
Yeah. So I'm known for my Dragon Quest stuff, and like more recently my Like a Dragon / Yakuza stuff. And every now and again I do an editorial that's really good, I guess. And yeah, that's me.
And you have your sweet coffee and Kiwami streams.
I also do weekly streams Monday through Thursday, 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. Always on the dot. I've never been late, not once. And they're called Coffee Kiwami, and it's me with some coffee in my hand, and we just hang out. Or now recently we've been playing through Dragon Quest 11S because I hadn't played through it yet, and that's what I've been doing recently. Yeah,
that's like my first bombarding of you, because I'm a persistent hoe, and I was like, yo, I'm on your stream, and I know this isn't politically correct, but come on my podcast.
And you know what I at first I was like, who's this? And then after a while I was like, nah, this will be fun. I could do a Dragon Quest thing, because I hadn't done a Dragon Quest thing in a while when you asked, and I was like, I'm in the mood.
K-Bash was literally like, if you just say my name, then he will instantly do it. I'm like, I just want to see if I can do it myself, man. Like, come on. And then Cullen, you're here, and I have to say, I did not know who you were before GC saying. However, I really like your content, and I've watched a lot of it now, and you have a very, very good YouTube / podcast voice.
Everyone always gasses my voice up, and I don't get it because I listen to it so often while editing, and it sounds very shrill. But
everybody hates their own voice.
Oh,
though.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I also don't get it.
I have to fumble. Wait, what?
I don't get it. I don't get why everyone likes your voice.
Yeah, no, I hate your voice.
Yours just gets on my nerves.
Fair enough. But like when I hear it, there's so many times when recording that you just like you hear yourself too high pitched. I have this idea that a lot of content creators started in the service industry and have grown a natural customer voice.
Sure.
I don't know if you've noticed this.
Forward-facing voice.
You're very like, hey, how are you doing today? Is there anything I can do to help? Because you're trying to convince people and make them listen to you.
Yeah. that.
Well, that's what I'm trying to that's what I've been trying to build off of in the last couple years, because I'm no more customer service. I'm edgy Cullen now.
I
I
will
have
say
Yeah.
people
deep
like
voice.
that more. I know as a former teacher, one of the redeeming qualities of why my students like me so much is that like I was not that guy. Like you got me as I am. So I think that's why people kind of like and listen to you, where you're getting the authentic version of you. You're not getting the produced version of you, and it doesn't give people that like false sense of, oh, I know who this guy is. But then when you have those real life conversations with them, you're like, oh no, they're not like that at all. So
The idea is to be a wild card. They can never guess where you're going next.
how would you describe your content?
Um, See, I had a term in mind that I came up for. It was one of my next videos, but I don't think that's necessarily appropriate for a podcast.
I'll be the judge of that.
All right,
It'll get cut if
it
not.
doesn't make any sense. But it's something I've deemed drive-by penis analysis.
Okay, yeah,
'cause
no,
it's
that's
like,
saying it. We're good.
okay, because it's I like to think that like my kind of content is the same feeling if you're like walking on the street and someone drives by really fast and she yells penis, and you go, that was kind of funny, and you just move on.
I like that. That's a good
But no,
definition.
I review visual novels, RPGs, just pretty much anything I am kind of interested in, and I try to bring. I know it sounds like very like played out, be like I try to bring my own perspective to different things, but that's really all like what most video game content creators do. Just anything weird or that catches my eye.
Mhm.
I'm big into jank, various things like that.
I mean, it's kind of the content that people don't talk about very much. And I know that you're saying like everybody puts their own edge on their own content in some way. I guess that's kind of true. But I feel like the bigger or more mainstream the content, the less of their own edge. Like you ever go to some of those bigger review channels and you know that they're saying what people want them to say. And you're just kind of like, oh man, like
Not
that's not.
necessarily that they're saying what people want them to say, but they're not really saying anything like
Noteworthy.
personalized.
Yeah. It's definitely like AI generated review content. You know what I mean? Like it
Mhm.
lacks that personality. And I think that's the nice thing about smaller creators is like you really get to just have your own niche and have your own approach to things. And that's why people like you. And it might not be for everyone, but I mean like it is genuine, like personal journalism. And I think that's really cool.
Agreed.
Yeah, kudos to you, man. All right, well, enough about you hoes. Let's talk about some Dragon Quest.
All right, let's do it.
I want to know, what was your guys' first romp in the Dragon Quest series? Because I mean, like, you guys are a little younger than me, so like, I can say something like Dragon Quest 1 was my first Dragon Quest.
Mhm.
And but even for me, it wasn't even on the Nintendo. It was like when it was on Game Boy Color, and they had like the 1-2 pack, and then Dragon Quest 3 came out shortly after that. But I feel like for you guys, it's probably a little bit different, right?
Actually, no.
Oh,
Yeah, not
really?
GC. He's old.
I'm
GC's
old.
super old.
GC, how old are you?
I'm 30 years old.
GC, I am still a lot older than you.
Okay. But we still have
I will be 37 in like a month.
we still have very close origin stories for Dragon Quest then, because
True,
my
okay.
first romp through Dragon Quest, I remember it to this day. We were at a KB Toys and I saw the box
It's
for
a huge throwback.
yeah. It's an old toy store for people who don't know what a KB Toys is. It was a KB Toys and they had Dragon Quest 3 for the Game Boy Color like on the shelf behind the counter.
That
And
glorious little box that they had for that.
Yeah, and I had gone there to go buy Pokemon cards, but I saw that and I pointed at it and I said that. And I told my dad, I said, I want that, like now. And I'd never really had done that before. Like I'd never been like, give it to me. And he bought it and I slotted it into my Game Boy Color, which I had on me because we were at a mall and we were going to be there for 7 hours. So I brought something to pass the time. And the entire time we were at the mall, I just played through Dragon Quest 3. And that was like my first romp through Dragon Quest, just at
How
the
old
mall
were you
playing
at the
Dragon Quest
time?
3. Man, I can't remember. I must have been like maybe 8, 9, somewhere around there.
You're like,
How
that's a
does
really big game for that age,
Yeah.
like a little more complex than what a lot of people were probably playing at that time.
Yeah, I had no idea what I was doing, but
I did
man, it
not
was
know this
fun.
about UGC.
You
I've
didn't know
never
that?
actually heard your like KB Toys Dragon Quest origin story.
That's
Maybe
my
call me a bad friend for that one, but yeah,
No, I mean,
never
it
knew
never comes up
that.
in conversation, but yeah, that's my first time ever touching Dragon Quest. It was just
Cullen, what about you, buddy?
spontaneous.
So mine was a bit interesting. I think it was around the year 2014. I
Poser. No, just
I no, like it's funny you guys talk about like, oh, the Game Boy Color. Oh, like for me it was I was at
New age Dragon Quest fan coming through.
I know I'm only 26, so I started on DS. When the
yeah.
3DS already existed, so I practically considered the DS retro.
Ooh.
So I was
Ugh.
graduating high school, and my my girlfriend decided to get me because I collected DS games. You know, I was a big retro collector. So my girlfriend saw me look at this Dragon Quest V copy they had at the store, and I was like on my phone. I was like, "Wow, this people really like this game. Like, people are saying this is one of the best DS games of all time." But I was a high school student, so I didn't have the money for it. So she was like, "All right, I'll buy it for you for your graduation present." I was like, you get graduation presents from your girlfriend?
And then
That
you
doesn't
married
make
her.
sense. We are still together.
Aww.
We are
That's
having
so
our
sweet.
10-year in October.
Aww.
Dragon Quest really just sealed the
I mean,
deal on that
that's
one.
that's how you know. Would you
That's how
say
you
that?
know.
Would you say that she is your heavenly bride?
Bride.
No.
No, but what is funny is that when she, because I was the one who set up the pickup order, and she went to go get it, and when she went to the GameStop, she was like, "Are you here for the hand of the heavenly bride?" And she was like, "I guess."
I suppose.
But she's not like, she hasn't really played the games, but she adores the slimes. Like,
Oh
if we have a
yeah.
holiday, that any holiday, either a birthday, Valentine's, anything, there's a good chance one of us will buy the other slime merchandise.
That's so
It's
cute.
the go-to gift because slimes are perfect. But I started playing 5. I will admit I did not become a huge Dragon Quest guy until 11, but from that moment when I got 5 to then, I would dabble in all the games. Like, I'd buy the new one when it would come out, play it for a little bit, you know, put it away. But 5 always stood out to me.
You started with one of the, in my opinion, one of the best ones. Like
Yeah.
one of the
Oh, yeah.
tightest stories, like bar none.
It's so it just, even though I never beat 1 until 11, something about 5, like I got it then and there. And I've been a fan to various degrees ever since. And then COVID happened, and that was my, like, COVID was my Dragon Quest obsession.
Is that kind of how you two met too? Because I remember you were saying when we met before that GC inspired you to kind of like take this journey upon your own. Was it from his
Yes.
retrospectives as well?
Yes, I said this in our little meeting before, but I started before GC and I were friends. I was a GC Vazquez fanboy.
GC positive.
No, I knew back then. I was
Okay.
like, there's a real man behind all this positivity, and I'm gonna get to it.
And you ended up, and you did. You know, you're not the first person to tell me that, like, you got into the Dragon Quest series through my videos, and that's still kind of wild to me.
It happens so often. Yeah, I'm like pretty cool.
It's not that it happens often.
Me,
but every now and then somebody will
walk
be
to
like,
the street and someone's like, "Oh, you should be my new dad," and I'm like, "That's whatever."
"Be my dad, be my Dragon Quest dad." Wait, don't do that. They always die.
I always get requests for someone's Dragon Quest daddies, so it's a little different, but I feel like we're almost in the same direction.
Yeah, GC's the patriarch of the Dragon Quest family.
You kind of are, man.
You know, maybe it's time to start putting out more Dragon Quest content. Maybe it's time to usher in a new age.
Cycling back to things like 8 years later, I just released my Earthbound video, and kind of like going back in and trying to see it from a critical eye instead of that like nostalgia driven eye is kind of fun. So hey man,
Yeah.
that could be a new way to throw some stuff out there. It just needs to live
GC's
up.
acting like he has not written a Dragon Quest script and finished it up in the last week. All right,
It's
buddy.
Literally just been sitting on it.
I have. It's 8 pages long. It's a good one.
Jesus.
It's a good one. It's a nice sizable.
That's not a script. That's just
document.
that's a full on Dragon Quest play.
I
Oh,
like how
yeah.
GC was here trying to, like, coyly be like, we might in the near future, and I'm like, no, I'm breaking that. He's working, he's cooking.
I am cooking. I took this. I'm taking a week off of like doing any like YouTube stuff, but I did do that. So yeah.
So when you said, GC, that like you saw it on the shelf and you pointed it and you were like, yes, that. What is it about Dragon Quest games that makes people want to play them? Like, why do we play Dragon Quest games?
Well, if I'm being honest, the reason I pointed at the box and I said give me that is because the guy looked like me on the cover,
Okay.
and I'm a huge narcissist. But the real reason, the real reason why people play Dragon Quest games, I think, is because of the whimsy in the series. I think it's one, it's whimsy, and two, it's simplicity. So you don't play a lot of RPGs nowadays that carry this fairy tale quality to them. It's this
They're
it's
like
this
bedtime
sort of
stories.
they're like
Yeah.
bedtime stories. They're like fables. They're like the kind of thing you listen to or you play or someone tells you about to tuck you in at night. And they're also like very, very accessible. Like if you've ever played an RPG, play any RPG like nowadays, or even like older ones, and there's a lot to keep track of in those RPGs, but Dragon Quest manages to deliver an RPG experience and have like a lot of personalization inside of them while still maintaining this very easy to follow system of mechanics.
There's
You have
definitely no layers of that complication that you would see in a lot of other games, which really can turn a lot of people off to gaming in general. Like you said,
Yeah.
it's just a very like approachable series, which is so great. Is that kind of what you're thinking too, Colin?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of the complicated math is very under the hood. So, and the way it like processes itself is designed to make those little like moments spontaneous of like there's so much math that goes into Dragon Quest. It's kind of crazy, but they don't front load it to the player. Anyone can pick it up, and those moments of specific detail, like different like mechanical things like shields, different like damage values, they don't you don't feel like you're exploiting anything or you need to know all these things. You just pick it up and you're playing this very relaxing, simple RPG, and that really just helps like get this vibe of approachability like GC was going into. Like they present themselves as traditional fantasy, something very cozy that anyone can approach because everyone heard bedtime stories growing up. Everyone knows what these symbols mean to them, and they're just able to get them quickly.
I think more than any other series, Dragon Quest is the most realized. And especially like coming in as a Final Fantasy nut, I think Dragon Quest even more so is just the most well recognized universe, and it's so consistent and familiar across each of the games. Like the identity is the most solid.
The
Like
iconography is just completely it's consistent.
if you looked at Final Fantasy or any game 1 to whatever the ending game was, you don't necessarily know how you got there because it loses a lot of identity along the way. But you can look at
Mhm.
Dragon Quest 1 or early Dragon Quest games and look at Dragon Quest 11, and like that is still Dragon Quest. And I think that really speaks to a universe and creating something. It's like going to a Disney movie, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like when you see Disney, you know something is Disney just because of how it's all packaged together, and Dragon
Yeah,
Quest is very much that.
exactly.
builds off of like the previous one consistently, and by
Mhm.
keeping the same art style and different like general sound to it, it just does feel like, again, like I love RPGs that do try to do crazy wacky things for every other entry. Like I am a big Final Fantasy fan,
Right.
but
And
also
it's
I do
hella
think there
experimental.
exactly, but I
Mhm.
think there is definitely a place for something like Dragon Quest, which is more consistent and decides to diverge in very minor ways that might not be immediately apparent, but you can tell if you've really like been into all of these games for a while and study them.
It's kind of we recently talked about Final Fantasy 9 in a little bonus episode we did, and we were talking about why Final Fantasy 9 is so important. And I feel like Final Fantasy 9 is what Dragon Quest is, in the sense of like you can look up Final Fantasy 9, and because they included so much from all the others games in the series, you get the like, you know that this is a Final Fantasy game because there's just so much Final Fantasy in that one title. But like you don't have to worry about that in Dragon Quest because it's all like that, you know. It's just, it's so I think that's one of the reasons why people really hang on to Final Fantasy 9 being a really pinnacle title, because it has that like, no, this is the Final Fantasy universe, like this is the identity that they're trying to really reconnect with, and Dragon Quest has just always been, and that's why it's so wonderful.
Yeah.
um is there anything that you would tell to someone about why they should give the series a chance?
You
Like
want
if
to go
there's not,
first, Cullen, or should I?
I can go first,
do it.
and it's really that despite how it looks and how much of a template it became for RPGs, no one can make a game like Dragon Quest. It is so weird how Dragon Quest games look like traditional fantasy, but there's nothing like them. I think it
Mm-mm.
has a bit to do with the fact that, to go back to the bedtime thing a bit, Dragon Quest games are the bedtime stories of RPGs told by a man who's been telling them for so many years that he knows when to kind of mix things up. He knows how to deliver it like the best he possibly can.
It's like when your
And
grandpa tells you the
yeah,
same bedtime story for the 50th time in a row, but this time he's added something new to it, or he's changed a character, and suddenly you're like, what happens next, grandpa? And you want to know more.
This the
it
same
like
story with that little twist.
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it refuses to play out exactly like you would expect a lot of fantasy stories to, because it eases you in with the familiar and is able to, in that framework, deliver upon like truly great stories that break the mold in a lot of ways.
I love that metaphor though of like bedtime story. My metaphor was kind of like Dragon Quest is the dad jokes of RPGs, but I mean like that in the most endearing way possible, just because I mean like you look at that universe, and starting with the fourth game and on, you have so many things that are just puns and dad jokes, and if I saw that in any other game series, I'd be so off put. I'd be like, oh, this is silly. I don't like that. But for some reason, that whimsy and that familiarity and that like storybook feel that you're talking about, it just really works. Like, I don't mind that I'm fighting a boss called the Rage and Contagion. I don't mind that that guy's name is Jack of all trades. You know what I mean? Like, it all just really works because there's that like level of like, no, this is comfortable. Like, there's just something very comfortable and fairy tale about it. It's like, of course, that's that monster's name. Of course, oh, what are the bulls' names? Uh oh god.
The bulls from which
Drake,
game?
it's either 4 or 5 and 8.
The
Buffalo
Buffalo
wings.
Bills.
Like of Buffalo
Yeah.
Oh
wings.
yeah.
Of course they're called buffalo wings. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like it's just so stupid but like so wonderful at the same time, and you don't see that. Like it takes itself very seriously, but it doesn't take itself so like too seriously that they don't have fun. And I feel like you see that kind of like dichotomy in a lot of other series where there's just no seriousness taken whatsoever. and it's just over the top. If you're familiar with Shadow Hearts, like Shadow Hearts kind of becomes that, where you have a lot of stupid things going on.
I
And
have
then
heard about Shadow Hearts like getting in that direction. Yeah.
in that, yeah, towards the end of the series, and then you have some games that are taking themselves like way too seriously, where they just don't have any fun. And this game is definitely like in the middle. Like it is a for everyone game.
I think the word that really works here is sincerity,
Hmm.
where
Earnestness.
earnestness, sincerity, like
Yep.
you have all these silly names and you have like all these like cozy vibes and stuff, and then at the end of the day, the message behind the games is very hopeful. Like every game has like a lot of like uplifting values, uplifting messages, uplifting takeaways of like, finding family, being closer with your family, finding, light in darkness and stuff like that. And I think that if somebody wanted to give the series a chance, that's something that's worth like telling them about, is that sincerity and that earnestness and just like a feel good RPG, whereas like some other RPGs will sort of have more cynical messaging, in my opinion, sometimes. And I think Dragon Quest forgets all of that and just pours the molasses, and it like puts a smile on your face no matter like how, like what situation you're in, no matter how dark of a place that you're in.
I agree. Yeah, I always keep my my 2DS, which is slime themed, and a copy of
Oh,
Dragon Quest
that's
7
incredible. I need to see that.
because I can actually go show you it after I'm done saying this, but like I keep
Yeah.
a copy of Dragon Quest 7 because that game's a billion hours long, and that slime DS. So if ever I'm feeling bad, open it up instantly to start playing Dragon Quest. But to kind of add on to like the dad joke thing, it helps that like Yuji Horii, the creator of Dragon Quest and the one who is stuck with the series from the beginning to this day, is like such a dad. And it, if you, though, depending on how you look at the Dragon Quest games, it really does feel like through those games you are seeing the story of Yuji Horii, like
Mhm.
how he grows and changes as an adult and different life lessons he's learning he adds into the games. So if you go from 1 to 11, you just see the story of like a lineage
Mhm.
of like where he is in life, and it's really cool.
Yeah, he made Dragon Quest 1 when he was like 27, and that story is a coming of age story. And that was like at the time that he made it, he was making huge life changes. So that kind of has a parallel to that. But then as you go along, it's like, oh, this is the game where he had kids, and so he wrote a story about taking care of kids, and like your character it becomes a dad and like raises a family and that kind of thing. And you can kind of like follow that through line all the way to 11, where at that point he's a grandfather, and he has like all these like grandfather characters in 11 who are very supportive and just trying to do right by their grandchildren.
Because you said it, and you're talking about the kids, and I didn't realize that he actually created that game at the time that he was having his kids. And that moment in Dragon Quest V where we have that time skip is so mind-blowing, because we, not that we didn't see time skips in games, it's not like that was an original thing, but what happens as a end result of a time skip is so cool. And was not expecting that. Like when I played that game, I mean, I tried to not read about any game when I play it, just so I can really get that like nice shock value when things
Mhm.
happen. What are some of the big mind-blowing things from the series for you guys? Like that was one of the big ones for me, and there are some others that I definitely want to talk about. But what were some of the ones where just kind of like I did not like, you were talking about some of these lighthearted stories, but like there's some deep that still happens here too.
I am so glad you brought up that time skip in Dragon Quest V, because that is actually the moment I was going to talk about. And really, really like Dragon Quest V in general has some of the most like narrative gut punches in the series. Like you're like I said, like we were talking about, Dragon Quest is full of whimsy and sincerity and wonderfulness. And in Dragon Quest V, your dad gets blown up by a meteor. But it's so full of like lovable feelings and warmth and happiness. And
you miss the part where after that you get sold into slavery for 10 years.
yeah, but it's so full of like wonderful emotions and stuff like that. You miss watching your children grow up because you turned to stone and your wife and you are separated in a tragic scene of heartfelt tragedy. But man, I love the whimsy of Dragon Quest, and it's got so many positive messages, and you will never be able to watch your child grow up and become the hero you wanted them to be.
That is a good, like, to kind of bounce off of that a little bit. I think Dragon Quest V is one of the first games I've ever seen do this, and maybe one of the only games ever that has this idea of you are not the hero.
Yes, that was a big twist too.
Like, one of the, and that really is just to kind of go off what I was saying about like the life story. You can really tell he had his first child born before that game, and just this moment of like, oh my god, I am not the most important person in my life anymore. And to convey that feeling into a game is so beautiful, and it's why I hate that Netflix movie. It's not explicitly a Netflix movie, but that like Your Story thing, which takes the one game in the series about how you are not the most important person in your life, to make it you're the most important person ever because you play games. It's so tacky.
I'm also not a fan of Your Story. I think to remove the most like impactful part of Dragon Quest V from the movie adaptation is bonkers.
It's weird. It's like talking about any adaptation, little tangent us talking about this, but like you can't take a full 30+ hour game and do it justice in a movie. So obviously they had to take it the best way that they could. I kind of liked it up until the ending when they had that. Like I feel like that was kind of like they just made this a Final Fantasy at this point, like drop in a surprise at the end. But like that was definitely weird. But you're right, like just the fact that you have this case of you are not the hero and you're not the most important person is not something that you see in games. It kind of reminds me of, oh god, not to talk about the book that should be canceled, Harry Potter, at all, but like there's a setup in like the 6th or the 7th book where like you find out that Harry and Neville have the same birthday, so there's a small chance that Neville could have been the hero. And I almost feel like it would have been cooler if Neville was that person because you're following Harry's journey the entire time. Like
just pulling someone out, pulling the rug out from the protagonist and making them realize that they're not special.
And it doesn't make the protagonist any less important. It just means that like you're just not the chosen one. You're still who we're focusing on. That's just so that could have been real cool. And it was cool at Dragon Quest.
It's so rare in storytelling to do that I love it every time somebody does it, especially in a game.
Especially because you are given the like strict instructions, like you need to take care of the hero, like you need to support this
they tell
person,
you that.
And you need to actually be there for them. It's like, I wonder if he's conveying the ideas of parenthood in this story where your child is the most important person ever.
On knowing that is something that reflected his real life, like I didn't know that, so that's really just makes it even more meaningful. I think the other thing that really shocked me in any of the games of the series was in Dragon Quest 11, and obviously like this is a spoiler for this game since this is one of the newest entry for a lot of you. If you want to skip ahead a couple minutes, but part 1, the world ends, and we haven't seen something like that since Final Fantasy VI, and you better believe I flipped my table over when that happened, because like I loved that. Like I love this whole thing where the bad guy wins, and not only does the bad guy win, like you actually lose one of your characters. And yes, you do get to retcon the entire situation, which was also mind-blowing and a gag, but like that is just here is a canon ending where bad guys win and you're just kind of like trying to clean it up as best you can, and that was awesome.
Yep.
Sometimes it's not always packaged nicely. Like we're talking about a lighthearted, whimsical story, and here we have like that kind of thing going on. So that's awesome.
I also I love I when you lose at the end of part one, I was like slack jawed. I was like,
I didn't see it coming.
I didn't see it
Mhm.
coming because everything was like too perfect. And I said, okay, they're just gonna tell a very like traditional Dragon Quest story. I wasn't expecting like any of that to happen. And then they went ahead and they kill off one of your characters. And I went, oh my god, that's one of the best party members in my thing. Oh my god. This sucks on so many levels of like I am sad this character is dead, and also what am I going to do with my party like situation, and sort of combining a lot of like just sudden like hitting you with like all these like sudden like twists is one of the most like I remember going, I can't believe they went there
Mhm.
with this series.
Yeah, did not expect Hendrik to be an actual
Yeah,
character. Did not expect Veronica to die. Did not expect what's her sister's name? I haven't played it in a while.
Serena.
So no, did not expect Serena to like become the sage and like inherit those
Yeah.
abilities. Like just so many cool little things that like wow, they really if I or Dragon Quest 11 is just one of the best games I've played in such a long time. It's
Oh
just
yeah.
yeah, it's just so good.
Like it, Dragon Quest 11 in particular lowers your guard because and especially if this is your first Dragon Quest game, you're going in just being like, oh, this is a cute little fantasy game, and you don't realize like fans will probably get an idea. It's like, okay, what's gonna happen? Because you
Mhm.
kind of, it's like, this is gonna go south. How is it going to go south? And just 11 is one of my favorite games of all time.
Oh yeah.
Like for this question, I initially wrote down in my notes just Dragon Quest XI's entire third act is one of the coolest things I have ever seen done in a game. One of the smartest, like a lot of it's contentious. I guess I get it, but I can't agree because it's just such a clever way they like introduce those ideas. It gets a bit meta in a sense too, in a way that feels
Mhm.
very earnest.
It asks
It's
the
just
question, what if you could take it all back? And then it presents you with an answer of, well, now
You
things
can
just aren't the same, are they?
right.
yeah. And when I see people say that, like, that's why it's bad, I'm like, no, just keep thinking about it. You'll
Mhm.
get there eventually.
Yeah.
Well,
It's
and if you don't like that, you don't have to play that
It-
third because it technically like is post game. Like it's not you could argue it's a true ending, but I wouldn't say it's necessarily the canon ending. You know what I mean? Like all these events have
streaming
already happened.
streaming the game on Twitch, people were telling me, they said, "Yeah, I didn't play the third act because I because the game literally tells you, don't do it." Like there's a scene where the game goes, "Don't do this." Your party members go, "Please don't do this." And then you can go ahead and do it anyway. But a lot of people play through 11 and hit that point and they go, "No, I didn't do it. Why not?" Well, because my friends didn't want me to. The people that I had come to that I became close with through this ordeal are like, "Please don't leave us behind." And so I
And
didn't.
it's very like telling in a way. God, I think about like 11, like that third act, and I get emotional. It's very hard not to because it's such a like a raw moment of like these people I care about. They're telling me not to do this, and I have done too much. I don't need to do this, but a hero would do what's necessary.
Mhm.
Like what like not a lot of people would go through this, but I am deciding that it's like if there can be one possibility for things to be better, even at the cost of my own happiness, I'm going to do it. And it's like the game makes you feel that. It's like, yes, this is at the cost of everything you built. And the fact that the game is so in your face about that, it's like the consequences of your actions, and people go, but they retconned and ruined it. All the relationships got destroyed. I don't get it. It's like, what don't you get?
People are
It's
just
like
looking for ways to be
I
critical of things. And
I
any way
know
that they can kick a good game down, they're gonna do it.
it's just yeah, it's one of the coolest like messages I've seen in a game, and those ideas told in that way are so clever.
It still hits me that ultimately, like at the end of Act 3, you're like, my takeaway was, I'm just not as close to these people as I used to be. And it's such like a everything's better, but we're all a little more distant.
Yep.
And it
Let
makes you question like what you do, you know?
While we're here, let's talk
Mm.
about some of these people because I think we can talk about like creative direction and why that made the game great, or themes and why that made the games great. But I also think that the characters are what make the games so great. And I can't remember if it was UGC or Cullen, but we were talking about Dragon Quest V and how there's like a few gut punches in there with how some of the stories are handled. And personally, I think one of the best designed characters in the entire series is Bianca from Dragon Quest V. And the reason why, being the canon wife of that game, I've
Mhm.
never felt more pulled toward a character as to why I need to be
Mm.
with them. And you guys may disagree, but we're talking about a character who we don't get to see any facial reactions to because, you know, she's just a sprite. We just get her text, but she is so well rounded in this whole, you see her as a child, she's a childhood friend, she gets you in trouble, now she's an adult, and you kind of like rescue her from this really sad life, but you also can marry this really rich girl. She
Or her cool sister.
or her cool sister. There's just something
Do the
really
cool
pulling.
sister. Pick the cool sister.
And
She has the
even
highest attack power, sorry.
Sorry. Keep
and
going.
and I mean, dark haired women, I mean, we got to support them too.
I'm always saying this.
But Bianca like even tells you like, no, go be happy, go marry who you want, and it's just so hard to say no to her. Like, she's just so sweet, you know? Like,
Mhm.
I personally think that she's the best choice. Everyone can say what they want, and that's cool, but I felt for that character, and it's not very often you care about a sprite character, you know?
The
Yeah.
story does feel written to kind of be heavily in her favor,
She also
but
breaks the mold of a lot of like romantic
mhm.
interests. Just, you know, just one of those things that I've noticed where like the rich girl is more the stereotypical like romantic interest in an RPG, whereas like Bianca is very self-sufficient,
Hmm.
you know?
Also to kind of
Mhm.
set this up a little later, maybe we can talk about it like further down the road. Party chat in Dragon Quest V on the DS version, it it adds so many layers to her, your kids, your entire party. If
Even the
you
monsters get little things that they can say too, right?
Yeah.
oh yeah, but like I feel like a lot of people don't play those older games with party chat and realize how important they are in those DS remakes in particular, because they're way less important, I'd say, in 11. But like for like things like 4 and 5, oh my god, whatever you have to do, play a version of those games with party chat, especially 5. There's so many extra layers written on to like Bianca, all of them, that are
Mhm.
just like you get so much more out of the game.
It changes those characters. Like it's you could even make the argument that Party Chat is the best designed character in Dragon Quest.
Yes.
Because Party Chat characters are like they have an opinion about everything and you get to
Everything.
know them and you're like, "Oh, you don't like this type of monster. Oh,
They never stop talking.
you're
It's
claustrophobic.
great.
You hate like tight spaces. So now every time I'm in a dungeon with a tight space, I'm going to be thinking that you're freaking out. I'm going to switch you out of the party." Like
There's a
you think that
moment
way.
in 5 I remember in particular. It's like when you're with your kids just kind of exploring, and I think you go to some place that like was traumatic for your character, and your kids are like, "Hey dad, are you okay? You're looking kind of rough." And just those little details, they're just perfect.
My candidate for one of the best designed characters in the game is entirely superficial. I'll just admit it. It's Torneko Taloon. Uh, he's a character in Dragon Quest IV. He's a merchant class. He's all about making money. His arc is all about making money, but he spends all of his money on community projects. And the way he makes money is killing monsters, which is arguably a community service. And then he sells the monster equipment that he collects to make money. And that's his business. And he wields a giant abacus on a stick. And that's why I think he's one of the best designed characters ever.
He's
'Cause
also
he's a
one of the
champion of
only
the
people
people.
who has his own game.
Yes, he gets his own spin-off game. He has several spin-off games, actually. They're all like dungeon crawlers,
Yeah.
like Pokemon Mystery Dungeon type games.
My Choice also has his own game, and it's everybody's favorite little shit, Kiefer from Dragon Quest VII. Goblin Boy.
Kiefer is a great character.
He is great. That's why I picked him, is because he has a little like old man face as a child, but also just has this really good arc of like, I don't know if we in this part of the discussion were like talking just about designs or just general character arcs.
I think all the above applies for the character here.
But his story about growing into his own person outside of his father's shadow, that also highlights how families can so easily fall apart without communication and like respect on both sides, that his dad just was not giving him, was just so like poignant. Because it's this whole story about how like, hey, if you aren't there for your kids when they need you, they're gonna be gone one day and you can't get them back. Like, you can just burn that bridge and then your son will be in 10 million years in the future, in the past.
And also, I think like on a more personal level with Kiefer, it's sort of like the realization that his adventure isn't important. Not like important, but like he finds a calling greater than his original goals.
Yeah.
And he realizes, he goes, these people need me. Like I'm needed here.
I
Like,
found my
could be
place in the
important here.
world.
Yeah, like he's at the beginning of 7, he's all about like, I want to go explore new places. I want to get off of this island. And then on the flip side, when he finds this place, he goes, I don't want to leave.
Yeah,
I want to stay
the
right
catalyst
here.
for the entire adventure.
Yeah, and he's the whole reason you left in the first place. And he goes, I'm done. I found where I needed to be. I'm done. And then you're sitting there going, what do I do now? I'm in charge now.
It's a literal goop, because you think of all of the games where you go on adventures with your childhood friends. Like, there are just so many RPGs, like that's a cliche, but to actually have one up and leave for a good reason, and you literally don't get him back at all. Like, he's just gone. So shocking. Like, it's not some random filler person where it's kind of like, okay, like, yeah, you had temporary party member vibes. Like, no, this guy felt like he was going to be around the entire time,
especially with the pacing of 7, where I think it's like 10 hours.
Yeah, it's not that far in the game that you lose him.
And more, and like super importantly, like oh no, I lost my train of thought. Hold on.
Gameplay, he's the heavy hitter. Is that where you're gonna kind of go? Gameplay, utility, story utility.
It's not like tragic. It's like it's not the death of a party member.
True.
It's
that's
not
true.
It's not like anything like super impactful. It is literally he just, it's not like a huge party breakup, like you get into a fight and that's why the party separated. It is as simple as, I have actualized like a thing about myself, and I am mutually saying it's all up to you now or whatever. And
growth.
And
they just leave. Like in that era, they're gone now. Like, even if you wanted to stop him, you can't.
And remarkably, it's just not like a dramatic moment. It's more of like a mutual understanding of, good luck. See you later.
I think obviously the further down the line in the games that we get, you're making room for a lot more character development that the earlier games just didn't have, because they were a product of the time where, like characters would have a little bit of an arc, but they wouldn't have that much. So I think some of these later games definitely have the advantage. But I would be doing my soul a disservice if I didn't say that I think that Sylvando is one of my favorite characters ever made. And yes, that is the gay in me. Like we talked about him in our very first episode, and I know everyone might try to hint at, oh, he's not really gay. It's about his wanting to be a performer. It's like that bitch is
That's called
basically,
allegory.
yeah, he's
You can get married to him on the Switch.
he is one wig away from being a drag queen, like literally, like he is flaming, and I love it.
He-
But you don't see that kind of character who is also a badass very often, and I think that's
Mhm.
very exciting for like my tribe, where we don't get representation very much in video games, and we do, it's not good. I didn't mind that Sylvando was a flamboyant character because he still had a lot of depth. Like it kind of reminded me of Kanji from Persona 4, where like there's
Mhm.
a debate whether he's actually gay or not. And sometimes you think, well, like, that could just be the Japanese censorship, not necessarily like wanting to make that inclusive story. But I kind of think he was. And Sylvando, the same thing too. Like here we have this like really cool character who shows so much more of himself. And you realize that like he was destined to be like this knight, but chose to like bring happiness to the world instead, because the world isn't necessarily a happy place. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. It's also important to note that Sylvando's like the most empathic party member in your group.
Mm-hmm.
Like he's the one that's immediately there to help people. He feel like he sympathizes with the most people in the story. And like for that to be the representative character in your story, I think that's really important, because it's like he's not a joke character. In fact, he's the emotional like anchor of the group. He's there
like,
for everybody.
Everyone loves him. No one ever gets weirded out by him. He's just like this force of good and positivity.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, thank you, Hori, you cool granddad.
All right, well, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back. And we are back, and we were just talking about some of the characters of Dragon Quest, and I feel like we could probably spend an entire episode just talking about the characters. And if you guys ever want to come back and do that, you are more than welcome to. But to keep the conversation going, I think one of the things that we need to talk about, because they are just so iconic, more than probably any other game franchise, are the monsters in
Yes.
Dragon Quest.
They are many, and they are very recognizable. And
why are they so iconic? Like what is it about
Toriyama,
them?
baby.
Yeah, I mean, like
It's
I feel
that
like that is
Toriyama
really is
magic.
the easy answer. Like, but I mean, like the obvious true answer as well. They're like
Mhm.
so
They're
well
adorable.
thought. Yeah, they're adorable, but they're also kind of terrifying. Like some of the personalities that these monsters have are like, yeah, you might be a cute little imp, but like that fork's definitely gonna go through my midsection.
And that's exactly why they're so damn, just like you said, iconic. It is this perpendicular sort of design where it's like Dragon Quest is a low fantasy story where people die and things can get scary. And then right through the middle, it's like, who's doing that? A cute little slime. And he smiles, and sometimes a little bit of drool falls from his face.
Do you guys have any monsters for you that are kind of like these are the bests?
I have one that burns into my mind, but I'll let Cullen go first.
Yeah, Cullen, you go
Oh,
first.
jeez. I was prepared to talk more about like the main villains and stuff, but in terms of just
Hey.
Oh.
general,
We will.
like,
That is actually what
oh,
we're going
yeah.
to talk about next.
Okay, cool. I think I missed out on a bit in my notes. That's on me. But you can't go wrong with the slime. Like, the people listening can't see this, but I have 2 slime plushes literally on my bed. I love slime merchandise.
I mean,
The
you have
evil
like a
slimes,
story tied to the slimes, right? Like with your girlfriend and
yes,
stuff. So
but like I also love the evil slimes, where like I think there's certain Dragon Quest X limited editions where you could just get like red-eyed evil slimes. I'm trying to think of anything else that, because it's really just you could pick any of the slime varieties and they're all great. It's a really boring answer, but
Especially if
they're
you get into the Dragon Quest Monsters series,
oh
like there
yeah.
are even more variations of the slime. You have Drac slimes, you have Fang slimes, like so many different in there.
you get, if you play Rocket Slime, you get a couple, like you find a lot of ways they can make the blue slime into different characters that are really fun, like the Mori slime, who has like a
The
big mutton chops looking thing.
the metal slime that's ridden by the knight, that's one of my favorites right there, especially in
I love
11, I
slime
think, where you
knights.
can like just hop on as well, and all
Mhm.
three you're going on a little adventure together. Oh, it's so good.
All right, GC,
Uh,
who you got?
one of my favorite, I am a big fan of the I can't remember if they're if they're the killer machines. I think they're called killer
Okay.
machines.
Yeah.
They're the hunters, the mech hunters, because they kind of look like Toriyama's take on the Zaku's from Gundam, and I think that's
A
like
little bit.
really cool. And they have like they are genuinely like frightening enemies in every game that I
Oh
encounter
yeah.
them in.
There's an
In
entire
11 they
plot
get
arc
2
in
turns.
7 around
Yeah.
them. Yeah.
And like to me, I think they're like secretly the big bads. Whenever you come across one of the killing machines or one of the hunter mechs, uh that's when shit gets real, and that's when things start to get scary because they are devastating in combat. And I like their little suction cup feet. They have like little suction cup
Suction
feet.
cup.
Yeah, it's Toriyama. It's Toriyama doing what he does best, which is making a scary mech that also has little spindly legs with big like half circle feet.
I think they're all good, and I know that is just like the most PC answer. So like, shout out to
Oh,
all of the monsters. However, I fucking love Draki so much. Like, slime is the iconic monster, but for me, like, Draki is the monster. Anytime I'm playing Dragon Quest monsters, I have one in my party. There's just something about that little bat that is so adorable. And then when you can fuse the three of them in Dragon Quest 8 to be Graki the Great Draki, like boom, like my brain is just gone. I don't
it's
know.
cool, right?
Yeah, I don't know what it is about Draki that's just so adorable, but like they're just the cutest, and like they're terrifying because they're like legit bats, like huge bats.
Everybody has a monster design in Dragon Quest that just stands out to them more so than the other ones. And like I feel like we could be here all day and like list up, like we could just sit here and think of like a bunch of them, like oh
Be like,
Hackosaurus.
oh yeah, the little imps that do the little dance, and then they do the nice little sultry turn at the back as they turn their head to where you like. Yeah, there's just so many of them. Colin, you wanted to talk about villains though, and I think this is also important to talk about. And this is we can get a little bit more in depth because like the monsters, it's mostly just design, but like villains have true depth. So who are some of the villains for you, or what is the villain for you that's kind of like that bitch? Like that is the one.
Dolmagus from
Yeah.
8.
Oh yeah.
Dolmagus is like, that is one of the most entertaining villains in the entire series.
And he's not even the main villain. Like
No.
He's a jerk.
yeah.
No
get to
redeeming
see
qualities.
You get to
Nope.
see him succeed. Like I don't feel like a lot of the other villains in a lot of other games in general, not just Dragon Quest, you get to see them do the deeds that they do. Especially like in a lot of the earlier Dragon Quests, it's very much kind of like, oh yeah, that's the bad bitch in the castle. Like we need to go kill him because he does bad things. But Dolmagus, you literally like get there every time he's either just killed someone or is about to kill someone.
It almost seems like he wants you to see him do it. Like it almost seems like he's waiting for you to like do the thing that he's going to do.
He has
Yeah.
big Kefka vibes for sure.
And just in general, like the actual true main villain of Dragon Quest 8, I think it's like Rapthorn.
Yeah.
That's correct.
That is such a cool final boss in design. Just this big dude floating in the sky, like just so imposing.
Chunky boy.
Toriyama has always gone off with final boss designs. The themes for those final bosses are rarely as consistent, but the designs are always just so cool looking.
For me, it's gotta be, and this is gonna be somewhat of an expected answer if people have seen my videos, but it's gonna be Psato from Dragon Quest IV. That final boss is immaculate.
It's literally one of the most iconic Dragon Ball Z boss battles from any game. Like, it's just so cool.
And like the story behind the boss is so good too, where it's just like he's just a guy who's trying to save someone, and to do it he tries to ascertain power, and like with all these characters that try to do that, he succumbs to the corruption of that power, and the boss fight is him like mutating into a horrible monster the farther you fight him, until eventually there's just nothing left in the tank and he explodes. And I just there's something that gets etched into your mind when you're fighting a boss and his arm pops off and then his other arm pops off and his head pops off and you think, oh good, I've beaten it.
I won.
And then a face grows out of his chest and he starts growing back all of his limbs and you're like, what is happening?
He's
And
like, nah, bitch, this is Dragon Quest.
It also goes to show just how good those DS remakes are. The sprite work in those games, immaculate.
It's just
Like,
it's perfect.
The animation is unrivaled on that system.
And that boss fight it requires you use every party member that you have, like every phase, like every limb coming off and every limb growing back is a different phase of that fight, and each phase of that fight requires a different party lineup to like nail. And
I'm pretty sure you can just do it with the boy squad. I don't know what kind of weak gameplay you got going on, but
yeah, GC's kind of bad at games.
See, I don't grind in RPGs, so like
you don't need to grind. You just need the boys. That's all. Bring it the boys. The boys will get it done.
Torneko, the hero, Ragnar, and
Boria, Kirill, and
there it is.
And Ragnar, the boys.
They'll just show up and they're like, we got it.
We got this. We got this. You got us that Metal King shit. We good.
Also, shout out to Kalasmos, the Lavos 2.
Oh yeah. Kalasmos. That's also a really good.
He's one of the hardest bosses I think I've ever fought. Like, he's just really, and for like how vastly leveled you are because of the way that game is laid out, like you can't not be at a really good level at that
You're usually
point.
like around level 60, level 70.
I mean, that is still a tough fight.
Yeah, and he still gives you a run for your money, man. And talk about like villains. Kalasmos is like the villain. Like he is the like they make it so that he is like the origin point of evil in the universe that is Dragon Quest.
Yeah, super cool design for sure.
It's like Perfect Cell, but you put a baby's head on it instead of like whatever Cell had going on.
Much more terrifying.
Much more terrifying.
So you were mentioning when you were talking about Sorrow, the switching of characters in boss battles, which was, I feel like, one of the first times a mechanic like that was in an RPG, like actively while you're in battle. Were there any mechanics throughout the series that you felt like this has helped refine the formula?
Because Dragon Quest is so simple, they try to find different ways to diversify each game, but I wouldn't say that they like keep those mechanics from one to the next.
Yeah, it's kind of for better for worse sometimes, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and I
They'll
feel
try
like
something, and if it doesn't work, they'll maybe be like, not that one.
yeah, or like this made sense for this game, but for this other game, we're not going to really go in that direction. What I actually thought was like a really cool mechanic that I wish they would bring back because I think it 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 kind of gives players who want more for their like more bang for their buck in battles, like it gives them more to play around with is the psych up mechanic from 8.
Mm.
Very underutilized, very underrated mechanic in my opinion, where you can play Dragon Quest 8 entirely without it. You don't need to use it at all. But if you start using it, all of a sudden the very way you build your party in Dragon Quest 8 changes, because if you're relying on psyching up and doing this big bombastic damage um after building it up for, a certain amount of turns, suddenly defense is a lot more important and you're not DPS racing as much as you were. And really what you're doing instead is sort of hoping that your defensive measures are more important. So you're playing with stat increases and debuffs and buffs more often, as well as building your characters in Dragon Quest 8 in the skill point system. You're building them in a certain way to take advantage of psych ups and stuff like that. And that's what I feel is like one of those cool mechanics in Dragon Quest that I wish they would bring back like desperately.
What is something cool about 8 that they actually kept though was being able to build your party almost any way you really wanted to, how
Mhm.
Mhm.
everyone could class into different kind of weapons. And it feels like I think they might have done that a bit earlier in some games, but it feels so much more designed in 8. Like
Yeah.
they designed every party member with specialities and you can build this character down like two distinct paths and you really need to commit to one and just because
And
it
that's
could
going to be
really just
your route, for
yeah,
that game.
I think
exactly.
that is one of the things that they've carried on very heavily since 8. I really am happy that they dropped the class system in that they introduced in 6, because it was kind of like a let's imitate Final Fantasy 5, and it was kind of clunky. But like you're saying in 8, here we are. We're not building around classes. We're building around characters, so that way the characters, story wise, plot wise, still have this like depth and consistency through their narrative, and we don't have to worry about a class influencing that. So now when you build your character, it really just reflects that person's play style. You know what I mean? It's really
Yeah.
weird when you're playing Dragon Quest 7 and you have like Maribel who gets the equipment of wizards, but you can class her as a knight, but she still can't use the equipment of knights because the equipment doesn't change. And there's just something like not right about the way that
Yeah.
that works. But like in 8, we have Jessica, and it's like, no, she's still some kind of wizard, but she can use like stabs, knives, and whips. It just seems to make a lot more sense in the narrative. And I think that's one of the big things for me. You still the skill point system, they still have it in Dragon Quest 11. I just feel like
Mhm.
it's presented in a lot better way, and it's
It
a lot more
further
forgiving.
personalize Yeah, and it
Yeah,
further personalizes it because you can skip over stuff that you don't want in that same tree.
And you can respec.
yeah, that's why it's a lot more forgiving, because you're not as penalized as for
Mhm.
trying new things or for dabbling, like, oh yeah, you're going to be half in this tree and half in the other one. I am going to disagree with you a little bit on the psych up system, just because I feel like it can really trivially words are hard,
Trivialize.
trivialize a lot of battles, just
Totally
because you can like
understandable.
super damage. It's almost like the oomph spell. Like every battle is
Mhm.
going to require you, in the earlier ones, so you have someone who can use oomph and someone who can use sap. And I really wish that there were ways to like make bosses and more engaging, so you didn't have to do that. And psych up was kind of the same thing for me, because once you get like that timbrel of tension, and especially in like the 3DS version, you can get two of them.
Well,
Like
yeah.
everyone's just using that to get your psych up as high as possible. So maybe if there was like a penalty, like, yeah, you're doing more damage, but you're gonna take more damage, or it's not as hard for enemies to knock you out of a psyched up state or something like that. Like I feel like there it needed to be refined just a little bit more, and then I would be
Mhm.
totally there for it.
Yeah, and that's why I wish they would bring it back because I feel like if they try to bring it back, they would like especially now because whoever did Dragon Quest 11, like because Armor Project works with other studios to make Dragon Quest, so like whoever they've got working on 11, I feel like they would be able to take that mechanic and do something really special with it and like make it useful. And on that point about moves that like you always have someone in your party that uses oomph or someone in your party that has to use sap. I think one of the things that they started doing with starting in 8 and moving on from that are abilities, and the abilities like Helm Splitter, which is like this is going to do damage, but it can also lower defense. This is going to
Mhm.
do damage, but it can also raise attack power. That sort of thing has started happening. Or like in 11 you have double up, which is you boost Hendrick's attack power by 2 but you lower his defense by 2, and it's a more extreme variant of like playing with stat debuffs where you're not spending your turns casting it, you're just doing it one time, and then that's your commitment to that like risk reward system.
Yeah, it definitely adds a little bit more of that variation.
Mhm.
One little thing that I really liked that I wish would come back, and I wish this was present in a lot of games. I don't talk about Dragon Quest IX very much, but just the fact that your gear reflects what you're actually wearing, especially with
Yeah.
how ridiculous some of the things that you get in Dragon Quest are. Like you get a literal turtle shell to wear. Like I love it when you actually have what your character is wearing is
Yeah.
what you see in everything. And the costumes in Dragon Quest 11 really help with that because you get to see some of these variations, but they weren't all like that. So
Yeah,
maybe bring that in a little bit more where we get to see a little bit more of that reflection.
I
Also
agree.
co-op.
Yeah,
Like I
bring
I
back
at least
multiplayer.
want 9 to be remade in some way cuz I'd love to play that with friends.
Mhm.
I missed the boat on that entirely.
That's another
So,
cool game mechanic that we just don't see anymore.
it,
You
like I
even
guess the MMO.
Dragon Quest
Uh,
Heroes 2 has co-op, but it's so stupid because you can't do co-op unless someone has beaten that chapter. So
That's
basically,
so
like you
weird.
have to go back and do it again. Like my co-host Jason and I were going to play that together, and then we like looked at it, and it's like that's not fun. Like someone literally has to go ahead, and then you can go back and do that. Why would you want to do that?
that
Like
doesn't make any sense. If I'm going to play co-op with somebody, I want to play the game from start to finish with them.
yeah, you should just be able to drop in. Like, I don't really care if I have my own character. Like, I should just be able to pick Yangus and level the floor with them. You know what I mean? So
Hmm.
yeah, I would. It would be really cool to see that.
And one more thing I wanted to bring up, and this is something that has not really returned and did not return in its own remake. The PS1 version of Dragon Quest 7 has like 2 to 3 hours of pure puzzle solving that was supposedly inspired by the game Myst. So it really is, it makes the beginning of that game become a point and click adventure game of sorts in a Dragon Quest game before you ever do any kind of RPG battling. And the remake cut it, which is such a bummer. Like, I get it because most people are not going to want to sit and do puzzles for 3 hours to start your RPG, but it's so charming, that original version of the game. And I wish that they'd make the games a bit more puzzly.
I
I
literally have never heard anybody praise that before, but I like how you phrased it in the sense of like it really just sets the scene because you're made to believe that you're in this very peaceful world. So if you're going to do that, you really need to give the time to show like no, there really are no monsters on this island.
hmm
Like they do not exist. So okay, I you sold me a little bit on that.
I
Yeah, and
also
like
want to. Sorry, go ahead.
I would be more okay with what the remake did, because for everything after that intro island, the remake it is way better. But the puzzles it replaces it with are so mind-numbingly boring that
Mhm.
it's like I would have preferred like ones that actually require me to think and are go on for longer than just walk into a room,
Yeah,
press a button. You did it. You solved the big secret.
cool game mechanic in Dragon Quest is the puzzle solving aspect, which has steadily been removed from the
Yeah.
series from like from 7 onward really. Like I think 7 didn't do so hot compared to the other releases for various reasons.
Well, especially in
Uh,
America, yeah, but
Yeah, and I think that kind of convinced them to like change how dungeons in Dragon Quest worked, and it's just a shame that one of those changes was removing dungeon puzzles from the
Because they got
games.
crazy in that like 4 to 7 era. There were some super cool puzzles there.
Yeah.
speaking of things that are a shame, what are some of the things that you feel like were mechanics that didn't work very well? Like I brought up the clunky vocation system in Dragon Quest 6. I just don't think it really went well, you know? Like
I
here we
think
have
I
this
think you and
system.
I are I think you and I are of the same mind.
Now, I remember specifically when you were talking about that game when I watched that forever ago on your video, ripping that game to shreds. I'm not completely with you on the sixth hate, but like, yeah, it just didn't work well. I think the only cool thing that they had going on was mastering classes to get to new classes, but like half of the things that you're like getting are just
It's
pointless.
it's just another move that does damage
Mhm.
a lot of the times. And I was going to say vocations in 6 and even 7
Yeah.
to an extent, they're just there's it's a lot, and you get a lot of moves that are different, but it's just another physical attacking move that targets different things. And then once you get into advanced classes, it's like, well, you need this many levels in this class and this many levels in this class, and together you can get this advanced class. And that sounds really cool in theory, but by the time I get to that point in those games, because again, 7 is so long, and 6 is Dragon Quest 6, and like, and my eyes start to glaze over, and I kind of get, it's not overwhelmed, it's not underwhelmed, it's
it's
exhausted.
it's whelmed.
Yeah, it's whelmed. I am full. By the time that I get like advanced classes in 6 and 7, I am full. I under like I have the system. I've been playing with it long enough. I wish the game was over, kind of feeling. Like, cuz there just doesn't feel like there's a lot of room to grow in the vocation system. Not to say the vocation system is bad. I like it in 3, for example.
Right. Well,
Um
they really needed something to expand the formula so that way you just don't have these static characters that are always going to be the same. Like what we were talking earlier about what made Dragon Quest 8 and 11 special with like the skill points and why that was such
it
a
was
great mechanic.
curated.
Yeah, it was curated. There was choice, but it wasn't such this like weird mismatch of like ideas or like useless filler content. Like it was curated like you said. So
Mhm.
it's almost like they looked at what everyone else is doing and then just tried to do their own version of it and it didn't work. But
Yeah, I think Cullen might have a different opinion than I do on this
On
one.
vocations?
Yeah.
I'm fine with them. I think they're kind of quirky. But I will agree with you in that I think 3 kind of did it a bit better than
yeah.
some of the other ones, if only for the novelty. Like a
Mhm.
lot of people don't realize, I think it was like Dragon Quest 3 came out about a month after Final Fantasy 1. And the Final Fantasy 1 archaic job system was like everyone they were like, "Hey guys, look at this. This is pretty cool." And then
Innovation.
Dragon Quest 3 comes out literally a month later. It's like, "No, we beat you to that. This is that we're changing the game and you're not getting even close to this until your 5th entry." And they're like,
Well,
"Damn, all
yeah, and
right."
the story's better and so much
Yeah,
of it.
it's literally just Dragon Quest 3 is so good and cool.
Actually,
Mhm.
let's hop onto that right now, because I want to talk about which games you guys think are the best in the series, and for me, I think 3 is one of them for that very reason. I think it's one of the last games that you can play where you have characters with zero personality, but it's still an intriguing game.
Yeah, and believe it or not, those characters have like, at least in the Super Famicom versions and in like the SNES versions and the Game Boy Color version. Well, the Super Famicom version and the Game Boy Color version, because there was no SNES version technically. Whatever. I digress. Uh, they have personality matrices that actually change like how they react to certain things, if I remember right. Like some of them actually do have like some things to say, if I could be remembering wrong. But yeah,
You are
Dra-
an old man.
I
Your
am an
memory's
old
not the
man. My
best.
my
I know.
memory is lagging. Be careful. Be careful what you say here, youngster.
And they
Okay.
had
Mhm.
the fucking Pachisi boards or whatever they were
The
called.
Pachisi boards,
It's
the
like,
Sugoroku
and they
games.
took it out of the iOS version, which I know like no one's playing anyways, but sometimes I would play it when I was teaching and the kids were reading. Hush. But like, why would you do that? That was such a fun thing. But yes, Dragon Quest 3 is so good.
Hmm.
What are some of the other ones?
Oh, sorry.
It's really I feel like this is a very like, with this group, you're asking for some pretty boring answers because it's like, wow, all of them. Like, I really have like, I could go through like, I think 4 is one of my faves. Like, a lot of people don't talk about 4, which I guess I'll get into a little bit more later. But like 7, I think, is one that I've always strongly loved. The easiest answer for me to give is 11 because it's like pristine. But if I were to go outside of that kind of general, like, because a lot of people say 8, 9,
Here,
maybe
let me whittle
11.
it in for you a little bit more then.
Okay.
What do you think would be the best entry points for
Okay.
people? Does that
11.
change it a little more?
Yeah.
Okay.
11 is easily, I think, the best entry point. It is presenting basically like a greatest hits album of Dragon Quest. It's pulling something from everything in the last 10 games.
That is true.
And it is packaging that in a modern framework, and it's giving it to like the current generations. It is saying, here's this well-crafted game that takes everything special about these games, and it is looking nice and pretty, and anyone can play it, and it looks really cool, and it plays great. If there's a high chance that if you start with 11, you will fall in love with the series and want to go back and see.
So Jason and I talked about this a while ago about like recommending series to people, and one of the things we talked about is sometimes you don't want to start with the very best entry because it's hard to go backwards. So I'm with you. Like, I know I could get a ton of people to like Dragon Quest 11, but I'm not sure if I could be like, okay, now go play blank. So
I think it depends on the person. Like, for me, 11 was the game that made me go back and look at the older ones with a better eye. Because I think some people might have the opposite problem of like, I'm going back to these older games, but I don't get it. I'm not understanding what makes these so special. And I feel like 11 highlights it better.
You think the tone is consistent enough that somebody can go back to the older Dragon Quest games and still
with a
feel
new
what
appreciation.
They felt from 11. Exactly, yeah.
Because 11 will show you what you were missing, and then you'll go back and realize a lot of this was always here. I just didn't see it.
Yeah.
And now, since 11 presents these ideas with all these modern game design flares to them, I just think like, because I think 11 is one of the best games in the series, but it's not even that like, oh, start with the best first. It's really just like anyone can pick this one up. It is so accessible to people. And if you don't want to go back to the other games, that's fine. But you'll probably start being a little interested. And I think most people, depending on where they go after that, will have some leniency to some of the more dated aspects of it.
I think
but outside of that, 8.
Yeah, I would say for me, I would if I had to hand someone off a game that was a compromise on the things that we were just talking about, I think 8 is that game.
Really?
For the same reason. I think that the graphics are 100% digestible. The story is very intriguing. You have this like guy who's literally going across the country and murdering him, and you're like trying to keep toes with him. 8 is the one that really sells the series the most for me. Like, I guarantee I could give it to my husband right now who's never played a Final Fantasy, and I'd be like, I know this is really long, but I need you to play this, and he would probably get through it. So that would be, I mean, yes, 11, of course, but for me, if I had to like dial it back, I think like 8 is that one.
My only worry with recommending 8 to people is just because it, more than any other Dragon Quest series, I'd say, it has that biggest like wipes its hands clean and be like, figure it out. We're not saying shit after this. Like,
see, I totally disagree with recommending 8 as a starting entry.
Bring it.
Yeah, I got you. So like I think one of the interesting things about Dragon Quest is actually that a lot of people will say like, oh, you know, any entry point's a good entry point in a series. But I actually think Dragon Quest has a lot of really bad entry points. If anything, you can say there are fewer like entry points in this series than not.
I actually agree with you. I don't think there are many games that you could hand off and like say that
like
this
2.
is, yeah.
Like, you can't give 2. You don't want to give, like, you could give 1, but you don't want to give 1 because 1 is
It doesn't give
really
a good picture of where the series went.
And I love 4, but I would not give 4 to anyone.
I actually see this is where I'm gonna.
Oh no! Why?
Yeah. Okay.
Ah.
So I think 8 is too slow. I actually think 8 as a game is very slowly paced, and it's very much for the Dragon Quest enjoyer who really wants to like absorb a lot of what Dragon Quest is. 8 is very slow. It's very plotting. That's not a bad thing in this case. It's more of like it takes its time.
Sure.
Not in the way that 7 takes its time. That's too long. 8 takes its time, really introducing you to characters, and it's not afraid to slow down. Whereas like I feel 7 drags on too long. So you can't really you can't recommend 7 because 7's too long. You can't recommend 8 because 8 is too slow. You can't do 9 because 9 is not a great representative of the series because its story is too short and it's mostly a vehicle for multiplayer content. You can't recommend 10 because that's an MMO and it's not in the West. You can recommend 11, but I would argue Dragon Quest IV is a better entry point. And the reason I say that is because Dragon Quest IV is the most episodic that Dragon Quest gets. And Dragon Quest is known to have arcs, and they block all of their story beats in little episodes.
But in that regard, 7
is more episodic.
7 is easily the most episodic.
Right. But Dragon Quest IV has 5 chapters, and each chapter introduces a new party member, and each of those chapters is dedicated to those party members, and it teaches a new first-time Dragon Quest player how each of those party members work and how each of those classes work. So
I would agree with you if 4 was easily accessible on modern platforms.
Fair enough. My entire point does fall apart.
Is, though. I mean, like,
no, okay, but it's available on your phone.
Yeah.
I would not say that is like it in a way it is and it isn't, but most people are not going to want to play that massive RPG on their phone. And the fact that the best version of 4 is on your phone because the DS localization cut party chat, which is more than half of the script, I think.
Okay, let me rephrase it. In a perfect world where copies of Dragon Quest IV were $15.
See, I'm living in reality. GC's living
in a perfect world
world.
where you could play on your DS Dragon Quest IV right now if you wanted to, without any ethical, moral quandary of like, how much money am I spending?
But if you had to compromise like everything, if we're talking someone who's completely new to a series or completely new to RPGs, that's why I feel like 8 is that, because I mean, like, you have nice graphics, you have some form of customizability, you have like a livable, breathable world. It's
maybe
not,
on the 3DS.
Yeah, on not the
PS2 version,
but the 3DS version.
I was gonna mention as one of my things that I don't think worked, random encounters. Removing random encounters from Dragon Quest is one of the smartest things they've ever did.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Like that, especially in 8. Oh my god,
that
much
changes the game so much.
Yeah,
I can't go back to the PS2 version because it's so good.
Just being pulled out of exploring that world is like the worst feeling ever. It's like,
especially when you're in a dungeon,
lovely place, and come on.
Since GC decided to shit on basically every game that wasn't Dragon Quest IV, I am curious.
Yeah, GC, come on.
What are the games that you think that like people probably shouldn't play anymore?
Dragon Quest VI. Don't play Dragon Quest VI.
I didn't even need to ask you that. See, I feel like I would hand someone Dragon Quest VI before I would hand them 4. I like 4 than I like 6. I like 4 a lot more than I like 6. But I mean, like, I feel
you start them with the worst ones so that they don't have, so that it's just uphill from there.
Possibly, but I also think that the Dream World, Real World intro of like, hey, we're fighting the bad guy right away is a lot more interesting than.
I agree with that.
Yeah,
that is
4 is the better game. I will never say that 6 is better than 4.
It's okay. You're safe.
I just, to kind of go on a very minor tangent, it is wild that in Square Enix's like whole thing now of remasters, those 3 DS games are just still stuck on the phone.
Yeah.
The fact that we cannot actually say like, here's a nice clean version of this game for like probably $10. Go play this. it's wild.
There's
But
absolutely no reason they couldn't port those
you
to
you
the
could easily
Switch
just change the
easily.
view to make it 16:9 with the way those games are built. You could do that. You'd have to make a couple things a little different, but you could do that.
Yeah.
Now for my stay away, like my least favorite, I'm going to be a little weird here because the obvious answer is 6 because that's divisive. So I'm going to go with a bit of an interesting one. The PS2 version of 5, I can't stand it. I know some people adore this thing and will tell people to avoid the DS remake, to play it on PS2 with the orchestral music. But one, I think the 3D models are ugly as sin. It just it doesn't look good with those because for those who don't know, they essentially took the sprite proportions and made 3D models of those, so everyone looks all like blorbos.
Yeah, for the million of you who haven't played it in North America.
Yeah, and there is a fan translation of it, but you're then making as like Westerners, you're making the choice of giving up beautiful sprites with amazing animation
and a stellar localization.
And a stellar localization. One of like incredible. Whereas
the DS localization is just
and also the MIDI music on DS is not that bad. If you're doing it just for orchestral music, you're giving up a great script.
MIDI music can be really good sometimes. Like I don't know why people complain about it so much. I think it has a certain like style to it that's very nice.
In this series,
I'm
on
that boat too.
Because some of the MIDI tracks we got on the DS game, like the 3DS games, are bad. Like 8's MIDI.
8's MIDI is pretty bad.
Yeah, well, but to be fair, you're like that you are seeing a huge downgrade from the PS2 version. So I feel like it's very easy to compare those two.
Here's the thing: the Japanese version of 8 on 3DS got an orchestral OST. And it's great. It's better
really
than the one
weird.
they released.
We just didn't get it here.
Yeah, no, we just didn't get that. So they downgraded our soundtracks in the West for 7 and 8 on 3DS. I don't know, like, well, I have an idea why, but it's so like 8's midis are so bad. So I will always recommend people find the patch online.
I mean, while we're on soundtracks.
Oh, I want to hate on a game first before we get.
Do it. Hate away.
So, okay, it's not actual hate, but I don't think I would recommend anyone 7 just because I think Kiefer is the only interesting character.
I'll fight you.
And it's really long. I like that game too, but I don't think I could like recommend that to someone. It's like the deep cut, like, hey, you want drugs? Oh, you've done drugs before. Okay, good. Go do this drug now.
this is that real shit.
But yeah, it's not the gateway drug for sure.
You're looking for something. You're looking for something more intense.
What are you buying? I think Dragon Quest 9 is also the one that like I know like it had a lot of success because of multiplayer and whatnot, but I think if you go back and really look at that game in terms of just like plot, it's boring.
It's very uninspired.
Yeah,
it needs a chance to flesh everything out.
I feel like it's a product of the times, and at the time, if you lived in places where people played games like that together, it was great. But like, I didn't have any friends that were playing Dragon Quest, so it was just me. And like, I liked to be able to create my own party, but aside from that, like the story was just kind of like I'm just the casual observer. I'm not really taking part in this at all.
Yeah, it's sort of just happens around you, as opposed to because of you or for you. And yeah, I definitely would not recommend 9 to anybody who wants to get into the series, unless it was like, you know, I want to play a Dragon Quest, but I don't want to play it by myself, in which case like that would be the weird requirement of like, okay, like I'll play it with you and then I'll talk to you about the series as we play together.
Oh yeah, I mean like that's super fun. That's also my love language. If you ever do that with me, I'd be like, oh, this is the best thing anyone has ever done for me in my entire life.
Yeah, like I think 9's in a weird spot where like you could find a reason. I guess
it's hard to do that with the state of DS games though. Like 9 is so of its time And because it's stuck on that platform and has never come out on any other systems, it is so hard to look at that game for what it was to what it is now. And as a single player game, 9 just doesn't. It just doesn't hold
It
up.
doesn't deliver. It doesn't.
No,
deliver.
but the idea of playing that with friends sounds so fun, and I'm sad I missed the boat.
Yeah. Okay, well, we didn't rip each other's heads off, so that's nice. But we are going to take a quick break, possibly rest at an inn and get a few herbs, if you know what I mean. While we're gone, why don't you head on over to our Twitter, Instagram, or Discord at RPGaymer. Leave us a review. Come join the conversation. We're slowly building up that community, and we'd love for you to be a part of it. And we'll be right back. And we are back for a mid-segment, What You Playin', where we talk about the games that you may not know, that we're taking our personal time and just kind of blowing stuff up. Cullen, why don't you start us out? What are you playing right now, buddy?
I took all of Friday off to play the, as of recording this, brand new Resident Evil 4 remake.
Ooh, jelly, helly jelly.
It was I can already tell, one of the Game of the Year contenders. It is immaculate in ways I really don't want to get into, so I might not even need that long to kind of talk about it. But just as someone who does not have a whole bunch of nostalgia for RE4 and just played that game as a game people said they liked, just better in every way. I know a lot of people are going to be like tiptoeing around of saying it's better. I've heard people say it's like, oh, it's just different, it can't be better because it's such a different beast. But I just like, I like this one more than that one. It's better.
Yeah, so I'm not sure like what review outlets you follow, but one of the ones I really like is Easy Allies. They used to be like game trailers back in the day, like a long time ago.
They're pretty good.
They're super critical of games, and it's not very often that they give something a perfect score, and they gave it a perfect score, and I was like, wow. So
Wow.
yeah. GC, what are you playing?
I'm playing a lot of things. I have a problem where I like.
Aren't we all?
I dip into like
ADHD is worse than mine.
So I play right now. I went back to Fallout 76, so that's like my most recent thing.
I'm
going back to
sorry.
Fallout. Yeah, I have a problem. I can't stop playing it. I come back to it. I've been playing more Mass Effect 2 in the Legendary Edition.
Okay.
Because I've been replaying through all of Mass Effect, and Mass Effect 2 is so much better than I remember it than I remembered playing it in high school. Now that I'm older and I can appreciate a lot more of it, Mass Effect 2 has like so many good little nuanced like pieces of writing in it, and I've just been having a grand old time just ingesting all of it. I did one of my character's loyalty missions, and it was like way darker than I remembered it as a kid. I was like, oh, we're just gonna go pick up his dad, and then as like an adult, I'm like, no, we're arresting his dad. This is a completely different context, but I've been enjoying it.
Spring is my cozy era of gaming because I usually try to play some things that inspire me to do stuff around the house. And typically that'd be like Stardew Valley, and by stuff I mean like big products and stuff like that. But I've played Stardew Valley so many times at this point that I'm just kind of like, no. So I'm actually playing My Time at Portia, which is also really fun, and
It is.
it's the type of game where if you haven't played it, you're more of a like artisan, so you build a lot of different things and make a lot of things instead of just farming and fishing, but you still get to dabble in a lot of those creative things, which I think
have
is
you
really
played
nice.
the sequel yet?
Sandrock? No, I want to make it all the way through Portia before I pick up Sandrock. Have you played Sandrock?
Yeah, I played Portia and Sandrock, and Sandrock is, if you like Portia, Sandrock is a complete echelon above Portia.
Good, because Portia is missing some polish.
Oh yeah, and Sandrock has it.
Yeah, okay, good. That's good to hear. Because yeah, when I first played Portia when it released on the Switch, I know it was on Steam for a while at that point. Didn't really have a good computer to play it. And it was pretty rough when I first played it, and it's a little better now. You can tell they definitely added a little more content. But Sandrock is on that list, so that's good to hear. Like, I definitely love a cozy game, and that one is definitely one I've been looking at for a while. So thank you for that.
You're gonna love it. I also recommend Sunhaven if you haven't tried that.
Okay,
that's a new one that I've been playing.
Currently typing that. What's the one that everyone is saying to play now too? Kinseed is huge.
Kinseed is I hear is like gotten enough updates that it's like pretty good now as well.
Just want to live my shopkeeper fantasy, okay? Okay, and we are back for part 2 of our podcast, and as usual, we play a game, and of course, we're going to play poorly described games because we're boring and unoriginal, and it's the 4th time we played this season, but I don't give a fuck. Here we are. We gotta do it with Dragon Quest stuff. What else would we do with Dragon Quest than poorly describe some of our favorite things? So this time, our guests have decided to participate in coming up with some of the clues and the guesses and whatnot, which is exciting. And these are some crazy kids, so I'm kind of curious to hear how you guys poorly describe some of the Dragon Quest things. As usual, we will give a poor description, and then we will follow up with some clues if they are particularly hard. Does anybody want to go first, or do you guys want me to go first?
Are we going to
do this one after the other, or list off all 3 of ours and then move on to the next?
So I think we'll just kind of volley around. Like, we'll each do one just to kind of spread it around. That way you're not like, okay, I'm done. I'm just sitting here. Yeah. And feel free to play along at home. See if you can guess these before we give the answers away. Because, we can probably get these. I have a feeling we can use our brains and stuff.
I picked some hard ones, so I don't know.
Oh,
I got an easy one we can start with.
I feel like I'm at the disadvantage here, but we'll see. GC, you can go ahead and start us out.
Okay. The poor description I have for this character, and I want you both to think about this one. Okay, it's just one word. That's all I've got. Okay. Goku.
Dragon Quest 8 protagonist.
Yeah.
You got
Dragon
it.
Quest 6. Yeah. Oh, okay, good. My next was Dragon Quest 6 protagonist.
No, that's Vegeta. That's different.
Yeah, that's actually, I was gonna guess that too. All right,
you got one.
Cullen.
That was my easy one.
Okay, so I guess I'll be a bit nicer and say that this is a location. It is a location in one of the games that consists of 5 points.
One more time.
It is a location in one of the games that has 5 points.
I feel like this isn't one of those really obvious things. Like,
you'll be like,
it's the
when you get it
right. Like, it's something silly like up to 10 towers, but like it's whatever 5 is or something like that.
So 5 points could either be like geographically it has 5 points, or it could mean something else entirely. Like it could be a mechanical thing.
Mm-hmm. Do you want the next clue, or do you guys want to give it a guess first?
I would like the next clue.
Okay. It holds the secret to make you the master of unlocking.
Patrick?
No, I don't know.
Is it holds the secret for you to be the master?
I told you mine are mean. Mine are mean.
Okay. Which Dragon Quest is
that's
this?
That's where I'm stuck.
And then the next one, 3.
No! Oh no!
I can't think of the names of the cities.
This is the place with where the orbs are held. Isn't it?
What's it called?
Oh, you can't do. Okay.
What's
the
it called?
the
It's
It's
eerie.
very simple. It
This-
is very simple. One word.
It's where you put the
Em?
orbs and the skybird is, right?
Yeah. Oh, is it the roost?
No.
The nest?
No.
What other bird related items do I have?
I never said bird.
I know, but there's a bird. The dragon. Oh,
You're gonna be so mad when you hear what it's called.
I'm supposed to know this.
Do you want me to just give it to you?
Yeah.
Any last
Yeah.
guesses?
I'm stuck. I know
It is a pyramid.
Oh, you're.
It's called the pyramid.
It's just called pyramid.
I'm upset.
You motherfucker.
I'm gonna
can't.
post a picture of it in our group DM. You're gonna just be like,
Oh, that's just the place where you get the key. That's not where the orbs go, is it?
I never said orbs.
It's
Yeah.
not. It's not. I just made that assumption all on my own.
That's where you get the key. Okay.
Yep.
Okay. All right.
I told you mine are mean.
All right, let's go. Let's go. All right, well, my turn. Reverse animorphs are infinitely less cool.
Oh, come on. No, come on.
Hmm.
Is this these aren't the bad guys from Dragon Quest V, are they?
It's not.
Dang. It's Gabo.
Is Gabo.
Yeah.
Oh,
My other
dang.
clues were no moon necessary for this transformation, and do the characters even really matter in this game? I guess Kiefer does.
Kiefer
I like
does,
'em all.
and then he leaves.
Okay,
All right.
see what you got.
Okay. So this is my next one. They were a lot happier as a kid, but revelations as an adult have really washed the color out of their hair. It's a brain teaser, I know.
I know. Revelations makes me think 6. I think that's the subtitle for that game.
Oh, Terry, right?
You
Is it
got
Terry?
it. It's Terry.
Yeah.
My other hints were people confuse him for Link from The Legend of Zelda a lot. And then
Nice.
my last hint was he's a monster tamer.
That's
I
good.
totally forgot his name. I honestly forgot Terry was in that game.
Oh, Terry is iconic.
Terry's the monster tamer.
I've played the least of 6 out of all of them.
He's like the most useful character in Heroes, and he has his own Dragon Quest Monsters game.
I guess I
That's
gotta play
great.
some
I gotta
6.
play
You
more
gotta
of it.
play some 6. All right, Colin.
All right.
What you got? How nasty you gonna be this time?
This one's a little. This one is either you'll get it immediately, or you'll be like, "What?" And I wrote 2 of these initial A level clues. I'm gonna give you the more vague one.
Okay.
This guy's a bit of a pothead.
This guy's a bit of a pothead.
Oh,
Mhm.
is it the name of the little? Is it Bangers or Mash?
Mm-mm.
It's not one of the kids who wears the pot on the head and no.
Mm-mm.
Okay.
That was a good guess, though. I would have probably gone with that too.
I
Is
can't
it
even
a
remember
monster
it.
design?
I can't even believe I
It-
guessed his name.
It is a monster.
Okay.
Oh, is it Unexpected?
Mm-mm.
Is it the mimic? Is it the
No.
pot mimic?
That's
Oh,
that's Unexpected, right?
oh, it is? Dang.
Yeah.
Do you want the next clue?
Yes, I do.
This one will probably give it away, but a father-in-law's worst nightmare.
Bit of a pothead. The father-in-law's worst nightmare. Is it Harry? No, it's a monster
No.
design. It's a monster design.
I mean, so
Pot. I don't know.
mm,
It is in Dragon Quest V.
Oh my god, this is the monster. Is this the monster that like harasses one of the potential like father-in-laws you get in the game?
I don't remember. But it is you are told you are given this quest by a father-in-law.
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yours are good.
Yeah. It's are you ready?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's Bjorn.
Oh, okay. Because he's trapped in a
The
pot.
big moose.
He's trapped in a pot, and okay.
And your father-in-law's like, you gotta go check on this pot, man. It's so scary. Just look and make sure it's sealed.
And then it's not. Okay.
Okay. Are you ready?
Yes.
Cross your fingers, cross your legs, clench your butthole, swing away, and pray for that sweet, sweet crit.
Hatchet Man.
It is not Hatchet Man.
Is it a skill?
It is
It's a metal
not
slime.
It is a metal slime.
Oh,
Yeah.
The clues were, wait, 1 damage? Oh man, it fled.
I'm really bad at answering them, but I'm really good at coming up with them.
Oh, all right. Here goes mine. This green giant is technically in a lot of games, but it's most important in just 2.
Is it that orc guy with the big club?
That is not the orc guy with the big club.
Green giant.
Is it that statue that's also a man? Isn't that a boss in one of them?
It is not that.
Okay.
It's a 2 game.
Is it a character or is it a monster?
It is more of a character than a monster.
Green.
Technically in a lot of games, but it's important in just 2.
See, that could mean
Or
2
most
Dragon
important.
Quest games,
or in the second.
the second game. And if it's just the second game, then I have no idea.
Want another hint?
Yes.
It's one of the biggest living things in all of Dragon Quest.
Oh, is it the tree? Is it
Which
Yggdrasil?
tree? That's correct.
Yeah!
It is Yggdrasil.
Wow, nice.
The green giant.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, that's good.
There you go.
Sweet. Okay, I got one. Yeah. All right. The deadliest force known to man, able to topple a gang of the lowliest creatures to the most ferocious giant. But
Whack.
that hit rate though.
Thwack.
Yeah, it's the whack.
Dang, I didn't even have time.
My clues were my boy Kirill wouldn't be the same without it. And then putting a ka in front of anything makes it sound cooler, right? Have you played Dragon Quest Heroes?
I have
bits of it.
So
I have played enough of it to know about Kirill's like thwack.
My favorite move to use over and over and over in that game is his like finishing art or whatever it's called, and just like
Can I be real with you?
Yeah.
The reason why I got it is because one of mine was whack.
Oh,
Not the one I'm about to get, but I already spent a bunch of time being like, how would I make something about this kind of general thing of spells? And now I can't. Dang it.
What was your? Let's do it now since you were there.
Oh,
what were your clues?
The last thing they'll ever see, if I get lucky, can sometimes work for groups. And then the game was just all typed in caps.
Now you know why we prep multiple, because for some reason it just happens every time. All right, well, GC, I think you're probably doing your last one now then, right?
Actually, I did 3 already, but if you want, I have a 4th one.
Yeah.
Wait, I thought you did 2.
I did 3.
I've done 3.
I started
I've done
this
2.
off.
Oh, that makes sense. I've done 2.
You need to do one, Cullen.
Is that the? I guess.
Yeah. It's okay if we're not going in order. Who cares?
Yeah, fair enough. The most useless waste of space piece of shit party member in the series.
I know this.
I mean,
Just honestly, just list some stuff out. Let's get it out.
What's the name of the prince in the second game?
Yeah,
You got
Yeah.
it.
it's
You
him,
got
right?
it. Yeah, it was way more easier
We're
one.
like,
Were we talking about that in our pre-meeting? I feel like I was hating on someone about that character recently. Was that,
he's so bad.
or maybe it was
I,
K-Bash. Someone, I was hating on him with someone.
That sounds like something we talked about.
I think so.
Yeah, okay.
He's terrible.
Was it
My second
Prince of
one-
So
Cannock? Is that
bad.
his name?
Yeah.
Yeah.
My second clue was the Prince of Wasting Space.
Oh no, poor guy. Poor guy.
He just stinks. You know, his official class is armamentalist.
What?
Yeah, it's like what do? They have like some stat stuff, but they have the worst HP. And it's like, well, what's the point then?
What's the-
He has worse stats than like the mage class.
Oof. Oof. All right.
Mm.
GC. You want to do one more?
You want to do your last?
Yeah.
My last one?
Yeah.
Sure. My house doesn't keep still, it flies.
Isn't that like your big vehicle in 5?
It might be.
Oh, do you want a name?
I want a name because there are many vehicles in 5.
It's like the Zenithian Palace.
Yeah, Zenithian Palace.
I'll take palace. It's castle. It's
Okay.
a castle.
Oh, fuck you, buddy.
Boo.
My other hints were this house is a lot nicer than most houses, and some people would even say it has its own trilogy named after it.
Yeah.
There you go.
Almost like it does. Okay, I guess since Cullen and I had the same one, I guess I'm taking it on home, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Screen clearing attack move or title of your sex tape?
Big
Bang.
Banga.
Yeah, you got it. It wasn't just bang, it was Big Banga. Yeah.
No,
Big
mine,
banger.
mine's minimalist. It's just bang.
Bang. Well, some of us like that Big Banga.
I got it. I'm so smart. Of course, I would get the sexually charged one.
I feel like this is the smoothest this game has ever gone. I feel like for a lot of them, usually we have to get like to the third clue each time. So I mean, like we obviously know our stuff, guys. This should be a thing. It's almost like GC should release more Dragon Quest content.
I should.
I'll beat you to it.
Do it.
Maybe it'll be a race.
I've been eyeballing those Joker games. You have a head start though. That's not fair.
Well, hey. I mean, life isn't fair.
Oh,
Things aren't fair. I'll give you a head start.
all right.
I'll close my eyes and I'll count to 10.
Oh, okay, cool. Let me just boot up Joker's one then.
Go for it.
All right, I've already beaten it. I'm publishing my video now.
You're allowed.
How the gag would be real if you literally just like screen shared and published a video. It's like it's done.
Well, what I need to do now is wait for you to upload this podcast episode, and that's my window of time.
Oh,
then
you
it's like,
have
boom.
until I can look. You have a while there.
All right,
Uh,
let the games begin, GC.
Well, guys, this was actually a lot of fun. And we know this, but our listeners may not know this, but we're probably going to do a side episode to talk about a lot of the things that we didn't get to talk about because we talked about so damn much. So if you guys want to jump in for an episode on things like the music of Dragon Quest or the side games that we talk about a lot, stick around. We would love to have you guys come back for that, and our listeners would probably love to hear it. GC,
Sure.
first of all, I want to thank you for being here again. This was literally like another check on the box of people who what how did you phrase it? The legacy people?
A legacy
Yeah.
season.
Legacy season checklist check right there because of you. So yeah, thank you for being here. Where can my homies find you?
You can find me on Twitter at GC_Vazquez. You can find me on YouTube at youtube.com/GCVazquez. You can also find me on Twitch at twitch.tv/GCVazquez.
What days do you
And-
usually stream?
Oh, we usually stream Monday through Thursdays from 11 to 3 p.m.
Cool. And Cullen, I consider you a friend now, which I do not use
Aw,
that
thank
term very
you.
lightly. I'm super happy that you were here, and I also would love to have you back on for future content because of that sexy voice you got there, bud.
Oh, thank you. I'd love to be back sometime. But yeah, you can find me on YouTube at just Cullen. Granted, I think if we're going by YouTube ats, one of the L's is like a uppercase I, because you know, whatever I could do to get that name. And then Twitter, Dr. Cullen PhD. And Twitch the same. I don't stream as much as GC. I mostly just try to stick to making video essays and stuff now. So, but yeah, you can find me on all those.
Sweet. Well, yeah, again, thank you guys. It was a very great time. And listeners, if you want to be a part of the conversation, make sure that you head over to our Twitter and Instagram again at HeyRPGaymer. We also want to thank our Patreon supporters for making dreams like this come true. If you enjoyed listening to us today, be on the lookout for our next podcast, Roguelikes, coming up in 2 weeks. We appreciate you all for listening and hope you had a great time. Now go out there and get gaming.